You know, when we think about what makes a childhood difficult, our minds usually jump to things we can see. But what about the wounds that are completely invisible? Well, today we're going to dive into one of the most common, but also least understood experiences out there: childhood emotional neglect.
So let's just start with a really direct question. What kind of childhood did you actually have? It's a simple question, but the answer isn't always so simple, is it? Especially when the hurt doesn't leave any marks you can point to.
To really get a handle on what this experience is all about, we first have to get clear on what it is and, just as importantly, what it isn't. Okay, this is probably the most important distinction to make right off the bat. Physical abuse is what we call an act of commission. It's about something harmful that was done to you. But emotional neglect, that's an act of omission. It's all about what wasn't done. It's the gaping hole left by the absence of emotional support that creates the wound.
So what does that actually mean? Well, at its core, childhood emotional neglect happens when a child's entire inner world is basically treated like it doesn't exist. Your feelings get brushed aside, your emotional needs go completely unmet, and you're essentially made to feel, well, invisible.
And here's the thing, this experience doesn't just pack its bags and leave when you turn 18. Nope, it creates these powerful echoes that can seriously shape your inner world for years and years to come.
This quote just gets right to the heart of the damage, doesn't it? As a kid, you are completely dependent on your parents. They're your mirror. They teach you about the world and they teach you about yourself. And their actions, or their inaction, ends up becoming the script you read to yourself for the rest of your life. And the way this happens is, well, it's devastatingly simple. When a parent's behavior constantly screams, "Your feelings are an inconvenience," the child can only draw one conclusion. They internalize that message as, "I don't matter." It's not a conscious thought process. It's a deep emotional truth they learn from their environment, and it can become a core belief that follows them right into adulthood. I mean, think about it. If no one ever sat with you and helped you put a name to what you were feeling, sad, angry, scared, or showed you that it was okay to feel that way, how on earth would you learn? It's no wonder that as an adult you might feel these huge emotions, but have absolutely no idea what they are or what to do with them.
And you know what? There's actually a name for this. It's called alexithymia. And it's not just some fuzzy idea, there's real research here. A pretty big study back in 2013 found a direct link between being emotionally neglected as a kid and struggling to connect with your own feelings as an adult.
Okay, so we've talked about the inner world, but this invisible wound, it doesn't stay invisible forever. It absolutely shows up in our outer performance, in how we walk through the world and deal with the people around us.
Wow, this is such a critical insight. If you learn as a child that you only get love, praise, or even just basic attention when you're being helpful or quiet or not causing any trouble, your brain learns a really dangerous equation. My value doesn't come from who I am, it comes from what I do for other people.
And this is where that classic people-pleasing pattern comes from. It's so important to understand this isn't a personality trait. It is a survival strategy that you learned as a kid. It's driven by this deep, gut-level fear of being rejected. Because for that little kid inside, rejection felt like it could literally mean the end of the world.
Think about it this way. Your family is your first social training ground, right? It's where you're supposed to learn the basics of how to have a conversation, how to disagree respectfully, how to connect. So if that whole part of your training was just missing, socializing as an adult can feel like you've been asked to play a complicated game, but nobody ever told you the rules.
So with that in mind, it's really no surprise that a lot of adults who are neglected as kids just end up avoiding social situations altogether. They feel awkward, they don't know what to say, and just beneath the surface is that same old familiar terror of being ignored or rejected all over again. All right, let's talk about one of the most confusing and honestly one of the most painful parts of this whole experience, that lingering, nagging feeling of resentment or anger that you just can't explain.
This right here. This is the paradox that can make you feel like you're going crazy. Maybe your parents provided for you in every single material way. A roof over your head, food on the table, clothes on your back. They weren't bad parents in the way we usually think about it. And yet, you just know something huge was missing from the equation.
And I just want to pause here and say, this is so important. That feeling is real. You are not imagining it. Even if you didn't have the words for it back then, your gut knew. You felt the absence, the lack of that deep emotional connection, and that feeling doesn't just magically disappear when you become an adult.
Okay,
So, if any of this is hitting home for you, the big question is, what now? Where do you even begin to go from here? Well, the path forward really starts with understanding and starting to reframe your own story. Let's just let that sink in for a second. Read it again. It was never your fault. As a child, you are completely dependent. It was your caregiver's job to provide that emotional safety and support. Their failure to do that was about them, not you. It was never, ever your fault.
One of the biggest things to start noticing in your own life is this pattern of self-abandonment. This is what happens when that childhood programming to be useful just keeps running on a loop in your adult life. It's that moment when being kind and helpful stops being a generous choice and becomes a painful obligation to constantly ignore your own needs.
And here's something that might sound a little backward at first. Healing this wound isn't really about endlessly blaming your parents. The real work, the crucial first step, is about turning that focus inward. You have to find a way to forgive yourself for all the ways you learned to cope, for all the ways you learned to survive. The people-pleasing, the self-doubt, that was your armor.
This is the new mindset. This is the goal. True kindness, true generosity doesn't ask you to erase yourself from the picture. It means you finally understand that you have to include yourself in the equation of care. Your time, your energy, and your well-being are just as valuable and important as anyone else's.
So I want to leave you with this one final thought, this one big question to just kind of chew on. If you gave yourself permission to stop performing, if you let go of the need to be useful, to earn your keep, to keep everybody happy, who do you think you might discover underneath all of that? It's a pretty powerful thought to carry with you.